Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this webinar on the potential for food and beverage exports to Indonesia. My name is Robert Law, and a very warm welcome to all our participants today. I know we've got attendees from a really broad range of agri-foods and food and beverage businesses, including horticulture, wines, dairy, avocado, honey, grains. So very pleased that you can all join us. Particularly a particular welcome to New South Wales businesses that are here as well, of course. I want to begin today's session by acknowledging that I'm joining you from the lands of the Wiradjuri people of the Kulin Nation, and I want to extend my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I also want to extend my respects to any Indigenous peoples who might be joining this session with us today. And it's a really important session, and we're really excited to be partnering with the New South Wales government to talk about the potential for food and beverage exports to Indonesia. As I said, my name is Robert Law. I'm the Director of Advisory Services at Asialink Business. If you're not familiar with Asialink Business, we equip Australian businesses with the knowledge, the strategies and the skills that they need to do business in Asia. I've got a couple of quick housekeeping things that I will go through before we get into the session. The first is just to note that today's session will be recorded. The Q&A function has been enabled, so once we get into the panel discussion, please feel free to add your questions there. If you'd like to direct a question to a particular panelist, then please do so. We have also received some questions in advance, so we will work through those. In terms of how the session's going to run today, I'm really glad that we can start with a view from the ground, hearing what the conditions are like in Indonesia at the moment. We'll then go on to hear a little bit about what the Australian government is doing to support food and beverage exports to Indonesia. And then possibly the most exciting part, we're going to transition to our panel discussion, and we have two incredibly experienced business people joining us who have hands-on experience navigating the Indonesian market. So they'll be sharing with you their journeys, some of the things they've learned along the way, and indeed some of the mistakes that they've made. And so hopefully you can avoid those as well. But let me start with two really great pieces of news. The first piece of news is that by 2050, agri-food imports into Indonesia are projected to grow 20 times to $150 billion. I'm just going to say that again, $150 billion of agri-foods imports into Indonesia. So the market opportunity is huge. The second great piece of news is that even though the Indonesian market can be challenging, there's some really great supports that are available to help you take advantage of that opportunity. The New South Wales government has a team on the ground in Jakarta, and they also have the New South Wales Going Global program, which is currently open. I think applications close on the 20th of February. So if you're interested, you'll need to get that in pretty quickly. What I'd like to do is to start us off by turning to Yonathan Wijaya. He is New South Wales Trade and Investment Director in Jakarta. Yonathan has a wealth of experience across agri-foods, food and beverage, and broader trade and investment issues. Yonathan, tell us about what you're seeing in terms of the local market conditions, and what are the supports that businesses can access in the Indonesian market?
Thank you, Rob. Hi, everyone. Really nice to see everyone today. And I'm Yonathan Wijaya, Trade and Investment Director in Jakarta for Investment New South Wales. We have been absent for the past 2 years, and I am here now together with my colleague Mainanda, our Associate Director for International Education. And we are here in the market to inform you about the situation and also to support you to succeed in the market with immense potential, as we mentioned. So next slide, please. how I will going to do this, how I will go about doing this is actually by mentioning the state of the relationship now, and also our footprint, and also I will go into the details about agri-food and beverage trends now in Indonesia. How is it going? What is in trend? How e-commerce and COVID-19 also affected, and also how we help and some current initiatives that we have on ground right now. Next. A little bit laggy, I think, on the slide. Can we proceed to the next slide? Yes, thank you. So a little bit of statistic from New South Wales. So in terms of two-way trade, now is at 2.6 billion Australian dollars. And the New South Wales good exports itself to Indonesia is about 1.3 billion. Interesting news, interesting statistic. In terms of growth, is at 23.8% last year. So last year it grows that much despite the pandemic. So quite an interesting statistic to see in terms of that growth, and we want to, of course, increase that. In terms of services exports is 1.18 billion, but this is the whole Australia. And 42% of Indonesian visitors to Australia is in New South Wales. And agri-food beverage export from New South Wales to Indonesia has been resilient. It's not affected by pandemic. It's still 7% growth in the past 7 years. So that is quite a remarkable number. And of course, Australia is #1 study destination for Indonesian students. More than 50% of them is in New South Wales. Next slide. So I just would like to mention about our priority in Indonesia. First is, of course, agri-food and beverage. That's why we are doing the Going Global program. Second is tech, and also third is education, which is led by my colleague. So we have presence now all across ASEAN in 4 posts: Indonesia, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia. We are recruiting my equivalent there. Next slide. So you have 2 personnel in Indonesia right now. For the rest of ASEAN, you have 1. So because the size of the market, and of course, education is an important sector to handle as well. That's why we have 2. And my colleague, the associate director, is actually the first globally for our specialists in the international education. Next slide. So I will go into the interesting bit, which is the trend and what is happening in the market from my views, and also from the research and reports that I am seeing. So, but the consumer and changing context, I think the population of 270 million, rising urbanization, growing middle class is something that is quite well known and commonly known about Indonesia. But I think something that we are seeing in Indonesia is that we are seeing expanded retail and food service outlets with more diversity, especially in the urban centers, so hypermarkets, grocery retails. There are more and more opening, there are more investment in this area. And for Indonesian consumers, we tend to be more price-led. So we are quite price sensitive rather than brand loyalty. But that is not saying that we don't see value in products. So some of especially the middle class and up, they see value in products. So that's why there's an inclination towards modern trends if something is priced and marketed correctly. So some of the products with good marketing, good value, they will see, consumers in Indonesia will see it and will buy it despite the premium price. So there's a rising demand of prepackaged, convenient, deliverable food products, especially during pandemic and online orders. I will also cover about the trend in e-commerce, how that affect food and beverage in Indonesia. And of course, this has been mentioned by Rob as well, 20 times increase to under 50 billion in 2050. Next slide, please. So there are opportunities and there are also challenges in Indonesia. I will be quite transparent about it. Of course, the opportunities, there is rising demand for food imports and consumption. beef, dairy, fruits, vegetable, grains. This will be mentioned in the DFAT blueprint as well, which Robert Fergusson will cover later. And also we have a special agreement with Indonesia, the IACPA, which inside 99% of Australian agricultural products which enter Indonesia will enter duty-free or with preferential treatment. Quite detailed information on this is in the blueprint as well, actually, if you want to check. And of course, there is increasing interest in what we call high-value sectors. How we define high value in Indonesia, we mentioned we normally see it as premium products. So the products that is not just commodity, just not your normal carrot, just not your normal apple or oranges, or something that is more of value, premium products. There's more demand for this. And also health and functional food, which the Indonesians are going more health conscious. Pandemic is helping it as well. So a lot of food manufacturer, beverage manufacturer are producing health conscious products like low sugar with a benefit to the immune system with vitamin benefit. So that is, I see this trend is increasing, and I think a lot of reports are reporting it as well. Also food origin consciousness. So organic foods, you are seeing it more and more in supermarket and grocery retails shelves. Halal produce is always a segment that is here in Indonesia, here to stay, and it's growing as well because we have more than 90% Muslim population. Non-alcoholic beverage is something that is growing. You see zero alcohol beer being sold in Indonesia, and zero alcohol beer you can go into convenience store, the mini mart, the last mile shop, because there's no restriction on that. But when you're going to soft drink and alcoholic beverage, the competition is very tight from the local players. So I would say the best opportunity here is competitively priced but premium quality products. So is the value, high value products that has a lot of opportunity here. Challenges. So we have to be honest and to be transparent. I think my fellow panelists will be able to share about this. That first is the regulation, of course, registration requirements. That is why it is important for you to have a very reliable, trustworthy local partner, local distributor and importer, and to really work on this relationship. I think is really important because they will be able to help you navigate. Those who are really experienced, they know how to do this. They have done this multiple times, and they will help you to navigate that. And sometimes government policy can favor self-sufficiency, local production to certain sector. I think dairy products probably was affected quite some times ago, and fruits and vegetables as well. But then again, there is a political debate here, because self-sufficiency, but also Indonesia might not be producing enough of the products, so that could affect the pricing in the market, that could affect the availability in the market. So that is the pressure that sometimes industry is giving. You need that regulatory restriction on sell alcohol, no alcohol in convenience stores. But in tourism area like in Bali, yes, you can find it in convenience stores. So there's an exception for that. And of course, infrastructure is a little bit still developing in the last miles area. But why I say this is related underground, but conditions are improving. There are a lot of new logistics startup that is offering new solution that you could go to the last mile within a day, for example. Next slide, please. I hope that has been useful so far. Do shoot your questions if you have any questions, of course. So these are what I'm talking about, the effect of other trends. COVID-19, of course. The sector itself has been very resilient. So it grows about, last year on year is about 6.5% food spending. That is still above GDP growth. This year, it is projected to be back to be around 7% growth year on year for food spending in Indonesia. So that is a positive side of it. But in terms of the impact of COVID-19, there's attention more on food security, making sure the supply is there, more spending on essentials. So for some of the sellers, some of the manufacturers, they are probably seeing less demand for their top tier products, the most premium products. They're probably seeing less demand for that. Alcohol sales down due to tourism downturn, but there's quite an interesting part of this because instead of despite the reported decrease in sales, we are seeing more varieties in the market. So my guess is that the online sales is not well reported in Indonesia because it is the sales has moved online a lot, and of course increase in health consciousness, as I mentioned. So e-commerce is of course one very, very interesting thing that affect a lot of industry for Indonesia. Indonesia itself spend 4 hours on internet per day on average. As a comparison, US on average only spend 2 hours. So that is an interesting fact. And we have the largest base of Instagram users of 57 million. And so that's why if your importers or distributors start asking you for collaterals they can use for social media, this is why. And e-commerce is valued now at 50 billion, and it will projected to triple in 5 years. In terms of proportion of that, revenue proportion is projected to grow from 11% to 14.4% in 2025 from total e-commerce revenue, but 90% of that revenue is domestic based. That means that doesn't mean that there are no imported products or foreign products being transacted. It just means that more that the transaction is done by companies in Indonesia. So if you compare to Singapore, for example, there's a lot of cross-border transaction in e-commerce because of the nature of the country itself. The last 2 points is a long-term trend that we are looking at. So provinces outside Jakarta will be spending 10% more on average than Jakarta. That is because one, logistic, and there could be higher growth outside Jakarta. Jakarta is quite saturated. That's why we are moving the capital city as well. But outside Jakarta, there are a lot more room for growth. And 2/3 of the online commerce spend will come from outside Jakarta. So tier 2 and tier 3, a lot of e-commerce is going into those cities because they want to increase the growth and to capture that growth from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So tier 1 is Jakarta, the metropolitan. Tier 2 is the next layer below the metropolitans. I'm talking about Jakarta, Bandung, Surabaya mostly. Next slide, please. So how we are helping you to succeed in this market? Onshore in New South Wales, we have 12 export advisors to help you to get your market ready, to get your export ready. And we have what we call New South Wales Export Assistance Grant Program. It's up to 10,000 reimbursement for marketing export development. And what I'm promoting right now is the New South Wales Going Global Export Program. So it is designed to support eligible New South Wales businesses to export and to enter the market. We have right now the agri-food and beverage to Indonesia. Registration is open. My colleague or Asialink could also post the link to register for more information in the chat box. So for Going Global, we'll support you in terms of getting you export ready, not export ready, but getting you to understand the market culturally, how to do business in Indonesia, but also on ground, I will be helping you to connect with your potential distributors or potential importers that we handpick and we select the most appropriate for you. Next. So other than that, we have also other initiative that is still ongoing, which is the AdTech to Indonesia, is led by my colleague, Nanda, our Associate Director for International Education. We have also the sister state or province relationship with Jakarta. So we are renewing the MOU, but inside that MOU action plan, food and beverage is one of the area that we want to work on. Again, Jakarta is, of course, the biggest market, and it is the sort of example for other areas in Indonesia. And if you want to establish a base of consumer. Normally you start from Jakarta because you have the most proportion of early adopters. So in Indonesia, the tier 1 cities normally would have about 20 to 25% early adopters, and then you have the majority, you have the laggards. Tier 2, tier 3 city, you have probably 10% early adopters, but the rest are laggards. Normally, that is how we see the consumer market in Indonesia for food and beverage, for FMCG. So just to give you a picture. Next slide, please. So yeah, Going Global is open now. Application is going to close in 20 February, so you can start registering. Program is from March to September. What we are trying to target also is a trade show in Indonesia called Food Hotel Indonesia. Probably you're familiar as well. We don't know yet if it could happen physically, but we would like to use that event also to connect with more stakeholders, more potential partners and importers, and also to showcase your products. We are looking at multiple avenues to do this, one-to-one business matching, but also product showcase and etc. So I hope that has been useful, and probably you have a lot of questions. Do shoot them out. I'm happy to try to answer that for you, and of course to help you to succeed in this market. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yonathan. Always great to get the view from the ground. Yonathan is staying around for the panel discussion, so if you do have follow-up questions, please put them in the Q&A, and we can get to those. And loved the focus on e-commerce. Such a big opportunity in Indonesia, really growing quite strongly. So, keen to see some New South Wales businesses take advantage of that. All right, now we're going to go now to Rob Fergusson from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Rob is a senior official with DFAT. He is Assistant Secretary of the Indonesia branch, and a very experienced Indonesia expert as well, with many years working on the country. Rob, keen to hear from you from an Australian government perspective on some recent developments and also something very intriguing called the Blueprint.
Indeed. Thanks very much, Rob. It's great to be here this afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming along, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. I'd like to flesh out a little bit more about what Yonathan has been saying, and talk about two things. The first is the free trade agreement we signed with Indonesia in 2020, i.e. SEPA, which Yonathan mentioned. But the second is the steps we're taking to make sure people understand the opportunities available under the FTA. Because if you've ever looked at one of them, they're incredibly large and quite dense. And often business says, this is all very nice, what's it mean for me? So we've developed a blueprint, which is now available online. And I understand the organisers are going to put that up for us. That will explain just what is available to you under this new free trade agreement. So I'd just like to touch on and flesh out a little bit more of what Yonathan was talking about before, as in why Indonesia? Why should you be interested in it? So I would just mention four things that always sticks in my mind. The first is, of course, that the Indonesian economy is really, really tracking very, very well. To the point that by 2030, Indonesia is expected to be one of the top 10 economies in the world. And by 2045, 2050, it could very well be a top 4 economy. So we're talking about an economy that's really going to be very, very large. Large also is Indonesia's middle class. So it has one of the world's largest growing middle class groups. It's about 52 million, I think Yonathan was saying. And we expect a further 115 million who are considered aspiring middle class. The other thing I always like to point out is that Indonesia really has demographics on its side. If we look at China, between 26 to 28% of the population are under 25. If you look at Australia, about 31% of our population is under 25. In Indonesia, that's over 40%. So over 40% of the population is under 25. Just think of the opportunities that creates in terms of the demand for education and training, for agricultural products, everything else as an economy grows and productivity increases. The other thing I'd like you to bear in mind is just the ongoing economic growth that, as Yonathan was mentioning, in Indonesia. We expect that in 2023, Indonesia's economic growth will be about 5.1%. That's comparable with China at about 5.3% and India just over 6%. And the latest data that we've just got in shows that the Indonesian economy has now surpassed its pre-pandemic size. So that's pretty staggering when you think of what a hit COVID has been. That Indonesia's been able to bounce back that fast is really, really very impressive. So one of the things that we are thinking about is, as the Indonesian economy bounces back, as the Indonesian government puts in place measures to recover from COVID, how does this impact on us? How does it impact on our trade? And the Indonesian government's really focusing on this in terms of its economic security. And from that, we believe there's a great opportunity for Australia and Indonesia to increase our trade links. So as I mentioned, lots and lots of potential, but there's a big but. That but is, despite our geographic proximity and despite all the potential I've just been talking about, in 2020 to 2021, Indonesia was only our 14th largest trading partner. In fact, over the last decade, Indonesia has never been higher than 10th. So there's issues there in terms of all the potential and all the things we could do. We just can't seem to get it up. In fact, a recent survey by the ASEAN, ASEAN Business Group showed that around 50% of the businesses they surveyed were actually aware of the Australia-Indonesia Closer Economic Partnership Agreement, our free trade agreement, but they weren't using it and they weren't planning to. In some ways, maybe this is understandable. As Rob mentioned at the beginning, there's been challenges with Indonesia. There's been a number of decisions over the last few years that have burnt some of our large mining companies, for example. So reputations can stick, and concerns can stick. But as Australian business stands on the sidelines, others are moving in. So a few things that surprised me when I dug into it is that in 2020, Canada, on the other side of the world, with a free trade agreement with the US and lots of opportunities in North America and Latin America, but Canada invested more in Indonesia than we did. And our total direct investment in Indonesia remains well below Taiwan, Malaysia, and even the Netherlands. And if you look at other countries in the region, Thailand, the Philippines, the Netherlands, Germany, all trade more with Indonesia than we do. So clearly, their businesses know something that perhaps ours don't, which is why, as the government, we're very keen to make sure that we do our bit in terms of not just advocating for greater trade, but translating, explaining the opportunities we now have under our free trade agreement, under IASEPA, and to help business deepen and broaden their trade with Indonesia. To do this, we developed what's called our blueprint for trade and investment. It is available online, and as I said earlier, I think the organizer is going to put up a link. This seeks to set out explanations on the opportunities that are now available to Australian business. It's focused on 4 key sectors, and we're keen to expand that later on. But for the purposes of most people here today, you're on the money, because one of the sectors we're focused on is agriculture and food. But we also focus on energy and resources, healthcare and aged care, and education and training. So one of the things that really struck us, as I said, when we looked into it, is that post-pandemic, the Indonesian government has really focused on food and food security. I think a lot of the challenges they've faced has brought food security into really into sharp focus for them. So one of the issues we've discovered, or one of the things that Indonesians have talked to us about, is the need to leverage Australia's proximity to Indonesia with our established reputation as a provider of clean and green products. And these are compelling reasons why Indonesians are very keen to look to Australia to help diversify and secure supply chains of food. So the blueprint looks at this and highlights Australia as one of the foremost producers of safe, high quality and nutritional foods, and that Australia already, as I think Yonathan was talking about, already has quite a strong reputation in Indonesia on which we can build. So I'd reiterate one of the things Yonathan mentioned, and that's that under IASEPA, more than 99% of Australian agricultural products will be able to enter Indonesia duty-free or under improved preferential arrangements. So the blueprint points this out, and it underscores that for us to take advantage of all these things, and one of the big things I want to stress is that the free trade agreement offers opportunities that someone like me, who was working on the Indonesia relationship 5 years ago, could only dream of. We never thought we'd get those sorts of opportunities. So what we see and what the blueprint is hoping to do is not just explain what's available to business, but maybe get business to change its mind a little bit, to look at Indonesia with a fresh pair of eyes. I want to reiterate too what the others have said, that we don't expect people to be starry-eyed. We don't expect Australian business to be naive. There are challenges, and it's a long-term game. But that's the same in many other places where we are wanting our business to invest and where business is already investing. So for those who are willing to go in, establish the relationships, and think long-term, we're really confident there will be rewards that will play out in the longer term. And what's reassuring is, despite some of the pessimistic or negative things I mentioned before, we are seeing an increased level of interest in Australian business. In fact, a recent survey of Australian business showed that 80% of Australian businesses were prioritising entering into new markets over the next 3 years. And what made me very happy was to see that Indonesia ranked 4th in export market destinations of interest. I probably would have preferred it to be first, but anyway, we're getting up there. The word is getting out. And 90% of businesses surveyed, which already exported to Indonesia, certainly were looking at how to expand their customer base in the country. So I'll finish it up there. I know we don't have a lot of time, but just encourage everybody to have a good look over the blueprint. Please get in touch if you've got any questions. Have a fresh look at Indonesia. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rob. And can I just say, you know, if you're looking to get a quick handle on the Indonesian agri-foods market, jump in the blueprint and read the chapter in there on agri-foods. It'll give you a really good feel of the market trends and forces at play. All right, we're going to move now into our panel discussion. So please do keep those questions coming in the Q&A. I can see a few in there already, which is great. I'm very pleased now to introduce to you Christina Talacco. She is a real phenomenon when it comes to exporting. Christina is the founder and director of Saldoce Fine Foods. They export allergen-sensitive products to over 20 countries, including Indonesia, and have won a number of export awards. In addition to that, Cristina has a number of other roles as well, including chair of the Coalition for Conservation and is a director on the Export Council of Australia. So we're very pleased to have you with us today, Cristina, and we'd love to hear a little bit more about Saldoce and how you ended up in the Indonesian market.
Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thanks to New South Wales Trade and Investment and also to Asialink for inviting me. How we entered Indonesia, we started about 12 years ago to expand into exports. We thought that for a small company like ours, it was really important to bring export as a key pillar in our business strategy. And we first entered the export market by attending international food shows and meeting with buyers and distributors and even getting consumer feedback on our products. We started very, very slowly with Singapore, and then we decided to sort of upscale into other Asian countries. And for us, I think Indonesia was a no-brainer. It's been mentioned before, and I don't have to repeat how big that market is, 270 million people, and also a very much growing middle class with increased purchase power in urban areas. Also, I think for us Australians, it's good to remember that we have a huge number of students coming to Australia from Indonesia, and they return with new ideas, with a great taste for Australian foods. They are looking for sophisticated and trendy products. So we felt like there was a synergy for us to enter that market. But because it's perceived as a very difficult market in terms of regulations and the time to register products, we sort of waited, you know, are we going there before we go to other markets? But we decided that it was a big enough market and a welcoming enough market for us to invest time and effort. And it took us about 12 to 18 months to register our products there. But in fact, we knew it was for a long-lasting relationship. So I think for us, it was a brilliant idea to get into Indonesia's market. Also, the fact that for me, culturally, Indonesia is so much easier to do business with than markets like China, for example, and our close proximity geographically also helped. And Robert mentioned that Australia already has this famous sort of clean and green, sort of brand attached to our food products, which we can obviously optimize. And that was actually what we felt with our products, that they wanted more healthy products and products that were available on the shelf from other countries. So this is the reason why we entered, and we're very happy that we made that decision.
It sounds like it's really working out for you. 12 to 18 months is, it's a bit of a lead time in terms of planning and registration and so forth. What market entry model and what distribution model do you use, and has that changed over time?
Well, there's different ways of entering countries when you're exporting, and we've used different methods in other countries. But with Indonesia, we're very happy that we found the right distributor from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. Our current distributor, we've been working for them for the last 6 years, and they have a major sort of understanding of the local market, and they're already importing products from Australia. So for us, that was important for a distributor who already had some sort of experience with Australian products. And they also understand, and they're actually quite tuned with the health food market in Indonesia. So we felt that the model we used in terms of just picking a good distributor, starting, quite slowly and focusing on the very high end retail stores, and then moving into maybe the tier 2 with them, and also, focusing a lot on online and selling from the e-commerce, which is growing in Indonesia, worked very well for us. So that was our preferred method of entering the market in Indonesia.
Mm. And in terms of the product that you sell, allergen-sensitive products, how did you become confident that you had product market fit? And have you done any product development and adaptation for the Indonesian market?
Well, I think that's, for Indonesia, I'd say that you have to really learn what the trends and what the local taste is for the markets and what's happening there. It's quite different to other Asian countries, and they're all different. We did a lot of trips to Indonesia before we started, even just to get closer and understand and do the proper due diligence on our distributors there. But participating in food shows, it's really important because you get a feeling from the buyers, the consumers, the retailers of what they're looking for, and you can adapt your products to what the local, the customer expectation and the local taste is. So we've done some work, even with our distributors, to decide on flavors, what method of cooking, and what are the preferences. For example, there's a growing market for vegan and vegetarian products in Indonesia. Have to be halal. You have to register all your products halal, and that's what we had to do through that process of managing to comply with their regulations. So there was a little bit of adaptation in terms of product, and I guess that's the recipe for success, is to make sure that you have a different model for different countries, and we've adapted to the local market in Indonesia.
And the last couple of years have been really tough for anyone who is involved in export, particularly with not being able to travel. How has your business been affected, and how have you adapted to not being able to visit Indonesia?
Well, COVID certainly affected our business because our products, our Yes You Can brand there, mostly sell on high-end retail stores. And there was definitely, with COVID, a lot of people were staying at home and not really, and prioritizing what they were buying, really. So our distributors were quite clever because they have adapted to focus more, I guess, on the online channels since mid-2020, when COVID was starting to happen. And they've set up a fully dedicated e-commerce division since last September, and they created these online distribution channels, presented our products. They engaged very well with local influencers and bloggers, and they built the brand and the profile during that year for us. And nowadays we're selling a lot online through them, through their channels like Blibli, which is a very big online seller, JD, Lazada, and others like Tokopedia. So we managed to sort of adapt to the situation with COVID through, again, having a good distributor who knew how to react to COVID. And we have been able to do that quickly if we didn't have them there. But we host regular Zoom meetings with our distributors. We're always talking to the sales force, and we're coming up with new marketing ideas on how to brand our products and continue sales and upscale and get into different online channels there.
That's really great, and it sounds like you have been perhaps a little fortunate, but also quite smart in really getting that distributor relationship right, which seems like it's a really important part of your success in the market. I'm keen to bring our next panelist into the discussion. We're very pleased to have with us today Fabrizio George. He is the incoming CEO of BESTON Global Foods, an ASX-listed company. He brings over 25 years experience in the global food and beverage industry, including roles with Bubs Organic, Nestle, Fonterra, and he's also held positions as well with Dairy Australia. So real specialisation in particular in dairy. Fabrizio, very pleased to have you join us today. Given all your experience with market entry and looking at the Indonesian market, what advice would you give to businesses thinking about the market, developing their strategy? How should they approach it?
Well, thank you. First of all, Rob, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for Asialink for the opportunity to address you all today. Well, without sounding repetitive, right? I think to what the other panelists already informed, I think Indonesia, it's very hard to define Indonesia, right? Indonesia is a continent on itself, right? So someone told me that you can spend 8 hours on a plane flying from one side to Indonesia to reach the other side. So it's an absolutely continental country. And obviously when it comes to distribution, when it comes to your ability to access the market, you've got to obviously to take that into account. It is a country in my mind, Rob, marked by diversity. It's I think as Yonathan indicated, you know, it's almost, when you talk about a city like Jakarta or Surabaya, you know, these are, you know, Jakarta, 35 million people on itself, you know, Bandung, another potentially 9 million people on itself. So I actually always encouraged teams thinking about Indonesia on designing almost localized strategies. You know, don't go too wide, don't go broader Indonesia, go citywide. You know, think about how you can win in Jakarta first, how you can win in Surabaya, in Bandung, you know, these major cities first. As Yonathan indicated, those locations, they are very different. They are early adopters. I completely agree with what Yonathan indicated. They are keen to, they're very passionate about quality food. And that plays a role in terms of your product design, in terms of your price points. One thing that I encountered in Indonesia over my time was sometimes the difficulty for you to have a specific pricing strategy across the entire country. Especially given when you're reaching parts of the country like Sumatra or Papua, right? So you because of the distribution costs associated to the archipelago, you very difficult at times to have the distributors, let's say, having a specific pricing strategy that is harmonized to the entire country. So a few things that I always think about, Rob, when it comes to Indonesia is the importance of localization, especially on my experience in dairy. If you think about the largest dairy businesses in Indonesia, most of those brands are localized brands. So, you know, Nestle, for example, they gave up in Indonesia the globally recognized Nido brand, and they went to a Dangkal brand, very localized brand. Fonterra, in my time, they went to Benito brand, which is again kids milk, very localized. So don't feel shy to think about Indonesia and designing a product for Indonesians. You know, which is a brand that can resonate for the Indonesians. Now, no doubt in my mind that product design is extremely important for a market like Indonesia. Specifically in dairy, we come across, for example, a lot of companies. If you're thinking about entering into the milk powder segment, for example, don't try to sell to Indonesia whole milk powder because the price point would not work. There is an affordability question around consumption of milk overall. And a lot of companies went down the track of substitution of animal fat with vegetable fat. So these are just a few examples where product design, product formulation is really important for you to then achieve a certain value chain, almost like backwards from a price point to the consumer in those large cities back to the manufacturer, right? Mm-hmm. So these were key considerations, Rob. No doubt that there are many others like labeling, like communication with the consumer, but I would say that product design, distribution, focus on cities and key retailers and customers is quite important.
Mm. Yeah, it's a really strong message coming through about really adapting your marketing, your product, your strategy to local consumers. Fabrizio, I'm interested to hear a little bit from you about regulation. Should people do it themselves? Should they get advice? How long does it take? And we did have a question come through in the Q&A about dairy and infant formula. So anything you can share on that would be appreciated.
Sure. And I think Cristina really nailed it. I think it's a complex market, and you're talking about anywhere between 15 to 18 months, I would say, on a best case for an infant formula, especially given you have to go through not only the factory registration, but then the product registration. You have to go through the entire halal certification on all of your ingredients, right? So it will really depend on the state of each manufactured supply chain, right? And your ability to already have some of those registrations and some of the paperwork already in place for you to respond to the Indonesian FDA. But I would really encourage you for people to think long term. I think that's critical in a market like Indonesia. I do remember we participated on an agreement with a large Indonesian customer for dairy out of Australia, and it was all about the long-term story. It was never a trading type of mindset. It is a mindset of really developing a brand, developing relationships, and really capitalizing on those. Rob. So I think from a commodity side of things, yes, you can always trade. But for brand building, for long-term business development partnerships, and those relationships are key.
And there's a lot of businesses watching today that are have products that require cold storage, and obviously dairy does as well. What are the main supply chain challenges that you see, and how have you gone about overcoming them?
Well, it's a fascinating question, and I could go for a long time, but I'll give you an example. Cheese. If you think about consumption of cheese as in Indonesia as the same type of cheese that we are used in Australia, they're not the same. So Indonesians, they consume a lot of what they call analog cheese, right? It's a very different product. It's almost a shelf-stable type of product. For example, in Indonesia, they have a concept of yogurts, but shelf-stable yogurts, right? But largely to deal with the complexity of the supply chain that the archipelago brings to manufacturers overall, right? There is a natural difficulty for you to find cold storage in Indonesia. It's very, very high in demand, and the costs associated to that are also very, very high. So your ability to design then products that still meets, what the Indonesians are used to becomes really important, right? But supply chain reliability, especially if you go out of Java, if you go out of the other islands, is really, really important. And having the right partnerships in place also critical.
I'm keen to, we've got a few sort of questions and topics we're going to get through. Keen to talk a little bit more about halal, to talk about organic products. But we've had a great question submitted in advance that I'd love to hear from all of you on now, which is the biggest mistakes, either made by yourself or maybe something that you've observed. Can I start with you, Christina?
Yeah, I think, one of our big mistakes we discussed prior, that for the halal certification, for example, there's a number of organizations that do that. In our case, we ended up registering for halal with one that wasn't really accepted in Indonesia, so we had to redo the whole process. We then eventually found a halal certification company that was suitable both for Saudi and both for Indonesia, because as much as you can, you want to have the same organization accepted in all countries. I think that one of the basic mistakes people make is they underestimate or they don't understand the regulations, and they really need to adapt, as Fabrizio mentioned, almost design their new packaging according to their regulations. All our products that said vegan on them, for example, for Indonesia, we couldn't actually enter the market with that claim because the vegan claim there, anything that you say vegan, each and every ingredient in that product has to be DNA tested, and it has to happen every couple of months. And it's an expensive ordeal if you have 30 products in the market, for example. So understanding the claims and the regulations is important. But for me, the biggest recipe for success is really finding a right partner, the partner that will support you, that you can have a good trustworthy relationship with long-term, that won't drop you along the way, and that has actually the right presence in the market, the right reputation in the market. And for that, you need to really visit the place and have face-to-face meetings. I know that they're not possible now because you have to quarantine for 5 days to arrive in Indonesia, but we're looking forward for all of that to be lifted, because we feel like it's, even for us who have already quite a good presence in Indonesia, we need to constantly be visiting and talking to them and understanding what they're doing. So yeah, and also pricing yourselves out. Fabrizio mentioned it's very price sensitive, the market. And it's always good to really focus if you have high-end products. Obviously, manufacturing in Australia is going to already be difficult because you can't compete with local manufacturers in Indonesia. So you have to find your best shot at putting your product in the shops or the stores or the online channels that are really high-end, I would say, first, and only move to the other top lower sort of demographic shops if your distributor can have access to them at a good price, for example. Yeah.
That's great advice. Thank you, Cristina. Fabrizio, your biggest mistake or maybe one you've seen?
Look, I think it's the temptation of always re-optimizing your exports to higher paying countries. That happens a lot in the dairy world, especially China. I'm not going to hide from you. I think exporters, or this is a debate that I have with whenever I talk with my colleagues at Dairy Australia. I think and Rob touched that, right, on the trade statistics and the fact that why Australia does not have a greater share in the total imports out of Indonesia. I think there's a lot of that, personally, my opinion. I think a lot of companies would see Indonesia as a bit too price sensitive. And whenever you have a big elephant in the room called China and paying big bucks for supplies out of Australia, you have an imbalance, right? You have that temptation to go full on China, right? So I think in my perspective, I invite everyone to think Indonesia long term, because the people, the first movers that will be in Indonesia when the economy started to ramp up as the prediction remains, I think it will pay back. It is the temptation, is the fact, let me send products to China instead of Indonesia because they are paying a little bit more, 5-10% more, and I will deprioritize the business in Indonesia, right? So that is, for me, it has been a personal mistake of mine, and I would not do that again, to be honest.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Yonathan, you work with a lot of businesses. What's a common mistake or the biggest mistake you've seen?
I think the biggest mistake would be not focusing on the relationship. I think investing in the relationship is important. I know that we all are keen to get a deal out of the door, get a deal across the line quickly, and it is part of our job as well in Investment New South Wales. But I always encourage to really forge the relationship, because that is what will support you, what will help you when times are difficult in the market. Your distributors, your importers wouldn't just drop you because of the relationship. And that relationship goes beyond just visiting and talking. Sometimes you go to Indonesia and you will have dinners with them. Sometimes you meet their family at times, and you know that personal relationship is important for them to be comfortable with you, to trust you, because Indonesia is a very relationship-based market. So the biggest mistake would be hurrying to go to the deal too fast.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get step by step and be comfortable with it, and they will help you navigate the market as well, and they will inform you about what is happening without you asking eventually, because of that relationship that you have. So it is important to have that personal relationship established.
And Yonathan, I might stay with you on this topic of halal certification. Should people be worried about it? Is it really that daunting?
Yes and no. So I think I should say that it is important. It should not be daunting. Some of the products to have halal is more important than the others. For example, if you're talking about meat products, yes, it is important. But there are other products that is less crucial. Perhaps if you're talking about horticulture, if you are talking about, of course, alcoholic beverage and pork-based product, it is not required. So it shouldn't be. It is important, but it shouldn't be daunting. And if you go to this is just a view from the ground. If you go to the grocery retail market, for example, there are non-halal certified products that are on the shelf together with halal products. For example, you're talking about root beer. Root beer couldn't be halal certified because there is a word beer in the name, just because of that virtue. Although it is a soft drink, but in grocery retails, it is in the same shelf as other soft drinks that are local and also probably halal certified as well. So there is that. It is really case by case basis, and your importers will know, your experienced importers will know whether it is really required or it is something that they can do and distribute without a halal certification.
Thank you very much for that, Yonathan. One of the other questions we've had is around organic and natural and the trend across the market. Perhaps I can maybe start with you, Yonathan, because we're still with you, and then I'll go to you, Cristina, just to hear your views.
So in urban centers like Jakarta, probably also in Bandung and Surabaya, the tier 1 cities, there's an increasing consciousness about the source of your food, the source of what you eat. So you are seeing more and more organic products in the supermarket shelf, even in the online space as well. So you're talking about e-commerce. You're seeing more and more people are looking for organic products because of this health consciousness trend, and also companies that have been manufacturing food or distributing food start taking on this trend and mentioning this is organic produced. But the other side of it is that there is no well-established standards in Indonesia of what is organic. So is it no pesticide, no GMOs, no chemical fertilizer, for example. There is no specific organic standards in Indonesia. So that is something that is still sort of gray area, but people can say this is an organic products, but the demand is there, is increasing for organic products.
And Cristina, how are you seeing it?
Look, throughout the years, I see that there's an increasing demand for health food products in general, for better food, better quality food that still tastes good. Because I think Indonesians don't like compromising taste over health. And there's also the price. So it's a big balance amongst all of those: price, taste, and health. But there's an increasing number of younger Indonesians and families that really want to provide the best to their children, especially the higher middle class. And we noticed that they're slowly learning more about allergens like gluten and what it does. And it's not a major widespread knowledge yet for the consumer or a major priority, but it's slowly building up. And it's our role, for example, to educate a bit more the consumers on what we do. But I noticed also that there's more demand for our products that are reduced sugar. And we're actually now developing sugar-free baking mixes for that market, because they're looking forward to buying more baking mixes that are either reduced sugar. They also, like here, the trends are global at the moment, especially, vegan foods, high protein, and all of those foods that we see here jumping off the shelves are starting to happen in Indonesia. And if you're there early, and if you register your brand and you do your marketing properly early, then you establish your brand, and I guess you have a higher rate of success than being there when the market is already so competitive. And that's why we registered our brand there 6 years ago.
Interesting to hear you say there's growing demand for low sugar, no sugar products, particularly when Indonesians have a famously sweet palate. So interesting to hear that trend is developing. Cristina, I might stay with you and ask about marketing. And you mentioned, throughout the course of COVID that you'd stepped up your e-commerce as well. What are the mechanics of it? How does it work? Who does it? How do you get it right?
Well, like I mentioned, we've done many trips to Indonesia to educate first, of course, our distributors and their sales force on our products, because there's no point just selling it into Indonesia to a buyer, but they don't understand your products. So it's very hard for them to sell it. So we started with that. We did lots of road shows. We met chefs, organized special in-store demonstrations to all our buyers. We've done cooking classes. And then we decided, when we moved into the online sales, that we had to do a lot more work in the social media and engage with bloggers, engage with their local chefs and the famous personalities in Indonesia. And our distributors are really good at pointing out which direction to go and where to put the efforts and the funding. So I think strong marketing programs and reviewing them quite frequently is really important to see where you're doing better. For example, I know that Indonesians seem to love Instagram, but they don't do like, in China is a completely different vehicle, is WeChat. They do a lot of sales through WeChat, but in Indonesia, they like Instagram, for example. So it's really understanding the age category that you're pitching for. And in our case, it's very much female, young moms, people who bake and cook, who have a love for cooking and baking, and health. So you have to really quite understand exactly where these channels online are, where these people are present, so then you can optimize on them. And we got a lot of, you can't really do it from here. So we set up a proper Indonesian page, not our, we also have, of course, our global page, but we have our proper Indonesian page for Instagram in Indonesia, where we can then capture the people there and even have language specific for the Indonesians in our online sales there. So I guess it's really working with your partners there to understand what's the best promotions and advertising and marketing programs to be part of.
Fantastic. I just a reminder to participants, we've got a little while left, so if you do have any more questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll try and get to them. There are a couple that I would like to see if we can cover off. Yonathan, keen to just hear a little bit about alcohol. What's the opportunity there and the challenges as well? Yeah, so Australian, I'm going to talk to in the space of wine and craft beers, I think, because beers are sort of a commodity and it's a tough competition in Indonesia. For wine, Australian wines are controlling about probably top 3 market share in Indonesia. So there's an awareness about Australian wine.
I think during COVID, the premium ones, the top tier is quite hit in terms of the demand, but the market is still here. When we talk to Indonesian Sommelier Association, they are still getting demand for Australian wine, awareness is there, and also a lot of them moved online actually. What is still going is sort of the still going well is the entry level wine actually. It's still, the market is still quite going, although we have to say that the probably the size of the market dropped because of COVID and the tourism dropped. So the biggest alcohol market would be in Java, Jakarta, and Bali. The space of craft beer itself, we can't see that in the convenience store, but there has been sales in big grocery retailers and also online. Interestingly, despite the drop in tourism, drop in the hospitality sector, in the past probably 2 weeks or so, I've seen 2 new brands of craft beer local being released into the market. So I would say it is still a lively market in Indonesia. I think the challenge would be again the licensings and the permits in Indonesia that could probably take a while. But if you work with a experienced partner, it's something that they have been doing and they know which channel are most hassle-free to do that. So these two are the 2 major products. Liqueur with probably 40% type of alcohol is slightly tougher because of the alcohol content. The licensing requirements is harder for that. But again, the sales of those goes online in e-commerce, and the retailers in e-commerce are doing a lot of effort for that in social media and also in e-commerce platform in Indonesia. And e-commerce platform in Indonesia, interestingly, you have timeline as well. You have the feed, so you can do window shopping in the feed, and people who has been following the retail shop can see your new products and they're marketing it through there as well.
Fabrizio, I'm interested just to ask you about business development strategies, and you've obviously had experience with those across a number of roles, and linking that into the marketing discussion from Cristina. What advice would you give to people as they think about their business development in the market?
Look, I think is first understanding your channels. Make sure that you're clear about your which channels represent the biggest opportunities, and do that research, right? Obviously, we did talk today about e-commerce playing a role. Are you selling, for example, your products into traditional trade, which is very large in Indonesia, or modern trade, which is the supermarkets or hypermarkets? So those channel-specific strategies are important when it comes to business development. Remember that in the food and beverage sector, especially around modern trade, winning at the trade is important. There are specific initiatives around trade marketing that, in my experience, makes a really difference on business development, Rob. Example, I do remember developing an entire milk pounder segment for the traditional trade, and that was to really secure the maximum visibility possible in the traditional trade, right? So those types of initiatives are important. It is, in my opinion, a bit of still traditional marketing, e-commerce growing, but winning at the point of sale in Indonesia is quite important, in my opinion.
Got just a couple of questions coming through here that we'll try and address. I've got one asking about any other Australian government support, so I might see if anyone can answer that. But Yonathan, a question here about Indigenous products. Really interesting, because I'm aware that a lot of Indigenous businesses are moving into exporting. Are you seeing any movement in that area?
Because I just joined last year's November, I haven't encountered that, but I think there could be some products that is moving in this area that, of course, we're really happy to help to connect that. And of course, on that Indigenous part, there's an extra value that is connected to Indonesia as well. We have our own Indigenous people, and that part of value of Indigenous culture and the and the asset of that is part of our MOU with Jakarta as well. So there's some added value there that we could, something more that we could market as well.
Fantastic. And it'd be great to see more Indigenous businesses exporting to Indonesia.
Definitely.
It'd be fantastic. Cristina or Fabrizio, have you taken advantage of any other, I appreciate we've got really great New South Wales government support programs and assistance, but have you taken advantage of any other support from the Australian government?
Yes, we've always utilized, everything that was available. We participate at food shows when the government is exhibiting or has a stand. We tend to go together and, participate at those. We have used before the EMDG, which I think is the Export Market Development Grant. And that assisted us, for example, to participate again at consumer shows, develop promotional literature and materials for online and also for our physical retailers and for our distributors. So I think there's a lot out there available that maybe, small companies don't know about. They have to really perhaps find a way of utilizing those available programs through the government and through Austrade. They're very helpful.
Yeah. And Fabrizio?
Yes, no, I would concur with Cristina. And even if you are a small exporter, there are specific grants around even your ability to fund the halal certification with your manufacturing partner, or even the registration costs that you would incur as a small exporter. So all those types of grants are all available. So, it couldn't be better being an exporter out of Australia, Rob.
I'll add to that, which is we've utilized before also some government R&D grants to be able to develop products specifically for Indonesia, for example.
Fantastic. And at this point, I would plug that Asialink business, we have an Indonesia country starter pack, which is free and has really extensive information on Indonesia that will be really practical for you. I just want to go to you, Yonathan, for the last word as we close up.
Yep. So I would like to thank everyone for joining. And of course, if you are thinking of exporting and Indonesia is really on your mind, do register for the Going Global program. We are here to help you, and we are doing our best to help you succeed, connecting, telling you about the market, and also connecting you with the potential partners in country. And also, again, I want to emphasize that relationship is important in Indonesia. Do invest in that. And we are looking at, if you're looking at long term, again, social media is here in Indonesia and it's big. So you have to start thinking about that. From my experience around 2014, 2015, when I'm thinking about long-term market, I will market to schools, to children. That will be our long-term market. So that's something that I do in second and third tier city, something that I did in Africa as well, and Eastern Europe as a frontier market. But nowadays, we move those kind of marketing for long-term market to influential people, to the influencer community in Indonesia. Because when those younger generation, they taste your product, they use your product, they become your long-term market. So that kind of marketing has shifted. So when we are thinking about long-term market, long-termism in Indonesia, we have to think about social media as well. Fantastic. So yeah, that's from me.
Fantastic. Look, allow me to extend my sincere appreciation to Cristina, Fabrizio, and Yonathan for joining us today, and Rob Fergusson from DFAT earlier. Fantastic insights. Thank you for taking the time to share from your experience, from some things that didn't go right as well. Always great to hear about those. We really appreciate it. And thanks to the New South Wales government for their commitment to the Indonesia relationship. And we're really keen to see that trading relationship grow and New South Wales businesses be successful in exporting into the market. Finally, I would just say we do have a survey that will come up. We would appreciate if you could take 30 seconds to do that. That would be much appreciated. And we hope you found today's session helpful. So thank you very much for your time.